Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club, and I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 40040. We'll be talking about CES and semantics related to productivity. So it's going to be an excellent show. And we're recording this on January 18th, 2021. Each week, we cover and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And to do that, we invite two panelists to join us, two experts in the world of productivity and technology and organization to talk about all the things in personal productivity and technology. Today we have Francis Wade and Trevor Law Beer. And so Francis Wade is the author of Perfect Time-Based Productivity. He's the host of the upcoming Task Management and Time Blocking Virtual Summit in March 2021. He has lived in Kingston, Jamaica since 2005. He's an avid content creator, newspaper columnist, and cyclist, of all things. Welcome to Anything But Idle, Francis.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, too. Next up, we have Trevor Law Beer. He is the founder of Day Optimizer, a web app that helps freelancers and entrepreneurs create a daily plan that reflects their priorities using guided workflows designed around neuroscientific principles. He splits his time between Asheville, North Carolina, and Berlin, Germany, and enjoys running, writing, and swing dancing. How fun. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you as well. So today is Thesaurus Day. It also happens to be Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and so hat tip to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the work he did in the civil rights movement. And but on the productivity side of things, it happens to be Thesaurus Day, and so I thought what we would do is have a little bit of an opening conversation around semantics and really how words matter in productivity. And I'm really curious from everybody here on the panel what your thoughts are around how you structure your productivity system in words. Things like choosing the right verbs when you're writing out projects or actions or things of that nature. How do words really affect your own world? In my case, I have a legend that I've created where I have particular words that mean certain things in my own personal productivity system. And I'm curious how you see the manifestation of words. Some of you are wordsmiths here, being authors and such. So, and coders too. Words matter in coding, right? So variables matter. So how do words matter in your world in personal productivity?
I think when I'm trying to explain a new concept, I try to not use words that people already have heard and already know and have already defined in their minds. That leads me to some strange language at times. But I try to push the envelope so that I at least sound coherent, but I try to be provocative in some of the things I come up with. Like an article I wrote the other day, I had to, in the middle of it, I realized I was trying to explain a concept that I didn't have a word for. So I created a term. I can't remember what the term was, but it was something passive and something active. But that's the kind of thing I find myself doing, inventing. If they're not words, I find myself inventing phrases and then attaching a meaning to them and kind of hoping that they'd stick.
So making things up is a mechanism for anchoring people in memory because it's unique, it's novel, it'll help them kind of be drawn into the material.
Yeah, it was something to do with context. It was a concept I came up with that. I don't know if you want the longer explanation. maybe not at this point. It's all right, but anyway, you get the idea.
How about you, Trevor?
Words are critical for me. In fact, I was having a conversation with my partner earlier about how it's going to be hard to translate Day Optimizer because I've used specific words for specific meanings and trying to commit things, to translate things. So one example is using the word commitment. The original name of that was intent. So this idea that you take your task list for today and you create a separate list. Well, that can just be a task list, can be an intent list, but commit is just a much stronger, more powerful, psychologically more powerful word. And so I'm looking for things like that. And then I'm also very interested in pattern languages and how do we create this terminology that people can use to use those things in other contexts. So I have things like the jump start, what a boomerang is, and all these sort of terms, just like Francis, that can hook into someone's mind, give them a concept, and then let them really use that concept in some way.
Language for me comes into two things. As a bilingual coach, it is interesting, as you were saying, Trevor, how little some of these things translate. The concept in English is completely clear, or vice versa, and they don't translate. That make it, a challenge. I always say, try to explain procrastination to a person who only speaks Spanish. Good luck. The word doesn't exist, and the concept doesn't exist either. So that is going to be an impossible. But at the same time, you go to the other side, to the Spanish, and there are certain concepts that you can define in English in one way, and then when you go to Spanish, you can define the same thing on different levels of emotions in 2 or 3 different ways. That make it a challenge to teach, to write, to explain, and even to coach people on how to be more productive, depending on which side of the fence they are. And I work with a lot of clients who want to change careers, and they're good. The technical capabilities work with go to that new career, but when they go to apply for the jobs and all this, they fail and they cannot understand it. And it's, again, that semantics, how you explain. I always said, and Dr. Buck is not here today, but when you think of the school principal, for most people has never come to think, okay, what is a school principal when you extrapolate that person from the school system and now plug it into business? And there is a series of capabilities this person has that will make match to certain things. But if you don't get into those semantics and you apply to that job and say, well, we are getting here, we need an account manager, what are you? Well, I was a school principal. Yeah, it doesn't fit, because those semantics are really, really critical to make those things match.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thought. Go ahead, Trevor.
Oh, I was gonna agree with that. In that, particularly in the programming world, we've developed concepts. The whole, again, going back to pattern languages, there's whole architectural patterns that were published and that have names that even if you haven't read the book, you now know that concept. If I say facade, what that means. It's a specific pattern. You could use the same thing in another domain, and it would just be completely meaningless to someone if you use that terminology.
I have 2 thoughts here when it comes to the idea of using words in personal productivity. One is that there are many terms in personal productivity that lack a central definition for a concept, and that really creates just all kinds of collateral problems. Some people call habit stacking the same as habit sequencing, and the same as routines. And those terms then create all kinds of downstream problems. And I've tried as much as possible to start to define some of these things and say, no, only when we use this term do we mean this thing. And that way we can start to have the same conversation about the same things. And that can be just incredibly powerful for everybody in and talking around productivity, but also in the context of working in an organization. You have to have the same language if you're working in the same organization. And when you are trying to speak 2 different languages about the same concepts, that just becomes problematical just generally. The second is when you have your own system, your own personal productivity system, consistency begets efficiencies. And so if you're able to have a set of a language that you are using with yourself, a set of words that you use when you're doing X and Y and Z, then you are much likelier to surface those words when you're trying to capture, when you're trying to clarify, when you're trying to write down those brainstorming concepts, and that speeds up production. And there's nothing like sitting and thinking, oh, you know what, I really don't know whether I should write down decide or commit or resolve to, and all of that vacillation, all of that indecision slows the process down. So just let's say commit to the word commit, and then you're done, right? You don't need to worry about those things. Now, if it appeals to you to use that word, or it repels you from using from getting things done, then to change the word. But choose a set of words that make sense for you. There's probably about 15 or 20 verbs that I use in my entire productivity system. Why? The fewer words, the more likely I am to know exactly what those things mean, and it removes choice. And there is this paradox of choice that we all have to be mindful of, that the greater numbers of choices that we have, the lower likelihood that we can make a decision. And so those are my kind of general thoughts. Any final closing thoughts about semantics in personal productivity before we move on?
I've got two things. Yeah. So Art just noticed, added a comment saying it's establishing a common glossary, and that is also a common technique when you're working remotely with a team. They say the first thing you should do when you're creating a remote team is let's come up with a glossary that says what those common terms mean. But the second thing related to the personal productivity thing that you were saying, you have specific words. The other benefit of that is you can then sort your list, and everything that is grouped together. So if you use 3 different words or 4 different words for the same concept, you can't sort by that. If I'm saying, oh, I'm going to fix, I'm going to repair, I'm going to do this, then all those things are kind of split all around across your list. Using the similar terminology lets you search it easier, lets you sort it easier. It's a wonderful system, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like tagging in a way, right? Because
Yeah.
you're capable of sorting in that sense. And I've used that mechanism for many, many years of being able to say, okay, all of my calls are start with call. I'm not going to say phone. I'm not going to say ring. I'm not going to use any of those words. It's just going to be call. And that way, yes, I could tag it calls, but I also know that I can just see them all in normal search. And I can see that across many different lists and that kind of. So great mention of that as well, Trevor. And welcome, Art. Glad to have you in the chat. Okay, that brings us to our stories of the week. Let's transition into our headlines. Augusto, what is our first story this week?
Well, the first story are going to be related to products and CES and fun. So the first one is some of the products, or some of the best Apple-related products that came into CES. And Mac Rumors came with a couple of articles, Correctable products, the Satechi. They have been producing really high-end, good quality products for Apple devices, iPads, and all that. So they came with these 5 products, same as Pioneer. Pioneer came with their Apple CarPlay, and it is interesting. I don't know. I came from a third world country where the first thing you do when you get a car is replace the stereo. Okay, why? I don't know. That's what you did, at least when I was young. Okay, you get the car and you got the stereo, and in many cases the stereo was more valuable than the car. But that's a story of another day. Okay, so Pioneer was the brand I like, and it is really fun to see all that happen. So there was a lot of things that came out of CES, and I was in a past life, I was one of those who get to CES or to Vegas Sunday morning, and leave Saturday at night after meetings and products, and you try to handle the meetings and the products and the announcements. And this year, everything changed. Last year, they did some remote because of the beginning of what we were understanding was the COVID. This year was all fully remote. It was really different. And it is interesting to see an event that really mobilized a city. I mean, CES and the porn convention happened on the same week. So it is a packed city. And it is really interesting to see how these things are coming into play to be all virtual. So now we are getting more used to this. But what do you guys feel about all these remote things and all this remote massive conference? And do you guys are thinking this is going to stay or is going to go, before we go and cover a lot of more products that we have in here?
So I will say that I have been saying that things like CES would probably go virtual and stay virtual. I'm thinking that I'm changing my count on that now, because feeling the almost like cabin fever of the people around me wanting to get back into a real environment with other people, I think there's going to be a little bit of a whiplash there. And once that happens, I think we're going to settle back down on the pendulum to some middle hybrid where we'll see more and more events go virtual because the technology gives us the capability, and we'll see some of those larger events, CES, Mobile World Congress, other large-scale product and technology conferences, and of course other, ATD. We're going to see more of those be in person because that's a networking opportunity as much as it is a money generating opportunity for those organizations that fund that host those larger events. That being the case, what do you all think? Francis?
Don't agree. I think that I think when poorly done or not very well done, the networking is not as well. It's not as good as it could be if you're alive. However, if you do it well, so if you have a community like Mighty Networks, and if you create connections between people that start happening before the conference and continue after the conference, all in the same space, I think the value of that far exceeds anything you can do in person. So I think the technology of delivering large scale online conferences is going to have to improve. But once it improves and gets to a point and people start realizing that there are things that you can do online that you cannot do in person, like meet many people at once, then I think they're going to stay virtual. And I went to ATD last year with 10,000 people, and I don't want to say anything uncharitable, but it was just like it was a madhouse. It's like a ton of people, everybody rushing from one room to the next. And I don't think they made the most of a live conference, to be honest. And so I think they didn't do the best that they could. But I think those things could be amazingly remedied if you do them online and you do them well.
Yeah,
so
but good event management creates great events, or great event management creates great events. I think that means the same in a digital environment as much as in a physical in-person environment. And I have been to physical in-person events that could not be replicated in a virtual environment, and I'm glad that I went to them in person. Today, I think that there's a rarity that I couldn't experience something very similar, not to that level, but very similar in a virtual experience, and that a lot of those are going to go that way, purely for the convenience. I don't have to fly. I don't have to spend the costs of travel, room, board, and otherwise. And
viruses.
Yeah, there's a health factor now as well, so that's probably going to create some travel hesitance on the part of those participants. But overall, I think that there will be, like I said, I'm standing by my statement. I think that we will have a whiplash effect where those people like me who feel a little bit of cabin fever are going to go back to live events, and then we're going to quickly see that move back toward the center, where we're going to see more and more either hybrid or virtual events because of that. I really do think that we're going to see more established virtual event platforms also get better, right? And that, I think, is going to really help to elevate the level of these kinds of in-person meetings. I mean, look at where we are right now in terms of technology. We couldn't do this just a few years ago, and now here we are, connecting from 4 different locations and streaming to, multiple platforms just with trivial technology. It seems trivial to do now. It is trivial to do now, which is just remarkable. So, can I talk about the air things now?
The what?
The air things.
The air things.
Go.
So
the next topic.
Unless anybody has any thoughts about virtual events, the air things is an air sensor technology. So AirThings sensors, we have one here in my house, and they're rather pricey, and they detect all kinds of anomalies in the air, from radon to carbon monoxide and all kinds of other things. And they have added in the newest AirThings at CES the ability for it to analyze the risk of indoor virus spread. And so this is really remarkable technology, and I'm really curious to see how this plays into it, and I'm wondering, is this a software update or is this a physical product with an additional sensor inside of the AirThings? I'm presuming it has an additional sensor, which means that the overpriced sensor we have at home now is obsolete. But this is phenomenal. I think this can really revolutionize a lot of small businesses. And again, that's in the space in which I work most days in economic development, and working with businesses who are in a place where they don't know whether or not their place of business is safe, and being able to have something like the AirThings, on an ongoing basis, testing the air and telling you whether or not there is fire spread, is a remarkable achievement. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that kind of plays out.
Unless that is a really expensive software update, you just make with the idea cry 1,000 of salespeople.
I know. It's better than the Lasso, which is a recycling container that's like $3,500. So, which I am not buying. I'm not buying an in-home recycling container that does whatever it does. It like removes labels, and it steam cleans the containers, and then it does all kinds of intelligent sorting and grinds the products up so that you can ship them off to the appropriate recycling facility. Not for $3,500. I can just use the existing infrastructure that we have. But yeah.
Well, the next product we have is a ThinkBook from Lenovo. That it was a really interesting thing. Again, part of my past life was as a salesman, and this computer or this laptop has the regular laptop, and the back of the screen has a screen that I'm going to presume, because you could not find the information, that you could use to do presentations, that you can share, obviously, your calendar when you have the laptop closed, so you can use it as a e-paper, e-ink screen on the outside. But I'm sure that you should have the ability to use it to do presentations or show your screen or share your screen with that. Military grade. It really looks awesome. I'm not a PC world. I thank you very much. Have zero interest on a PC ever again. But I need to admit that concept was really, really nice.
I saw it, and I'm a big ThinkBook user, but I don't know. It just seemed like a convenience versus productivity, one of those things. It's like nice, but I just couldn't imagine a sort of a real solid need for it in the real world, other than the whiz factor, the G whiz factor. I don't know. What do you think?
You see, I don't know. When I remember when the first tablet PC came out, that people could not understood why you care to flip the screen and turn it into. And for me, as a salesperson at that time, and we're talking about 15 years ago, that turned to be into one of my best tools, because I moved from hiding behind the laptop, into a conference, because now I can switch it, have the same thing, but don't have the laptop to obstruct, to being able to flip my screen and show the person the same thing, even live, even in the presentations. So I think these technologies, it can be convenience, obviously, but use it properly, it can be an incredible tool, assuming you can do these things that we are sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is a military-grade Chromebook. And yes, we talk here a lot about Chromebooks. Why? I don't know. Maybe because they're coming all about, like, I'm an Apple guy. But this is interesting because, at least to my knowledge, this is the first time I hear about such thing, about such high-end military-grade durability and all this on a Chromebook, that shows how much the Chromebook has making advance into those high-end markets that are looking for products like this. We may need Ray to cover more into the Chromebooks. He knows a lot more than I. But that was really, really interesting, the CX9 and what they're bringing, really a high-end product.
Well, I think this is a play at getting government contracts. I mean, the reality is it's similar to the way in which Dell and other manufacturers back in the 90s and early 2000s, they went after setting up these, high durable laptops to be able to put into the hands of military officers who wanted to have something that was, macho looking to be in the military. They're going to spray paint it with camo, and it becomes saleable, marketable to that audience, and that's just a reality factor. Now, of course, I think there is a value to having a very tough laptop in a lot of different environments. Say that you're an ironsmith or a carpenter. I know Art, has a woodworking shop. It would be nice to have the laptop out there, knowing that it wasn't going to get, punctured,
Dust.
destroyed, or dust, those kinds of things in use. So is really going to be the case for. Art is noting here that military grade is needed for 10-year-olds. Maybe your 10-year-olds, but
Yeah, my kids have zero chance of getting a military grade.
but
How does it work?
but there are definitely use cases outside of the military. But I see this as being set up a model for being able to show that to the military, that these devices are strong enough in physical form factor and powerful enough in CPUs to be able to do stuff in the military. And I think that's a really strong market that has not yet been tapped into in the Chrome world, and this gives them that chance at it. So good on them for doing that.
Why Chrome versus a tablet though? Why not just use a rugged tablet? In other words, if you're in a tank and you're firing at the enemy, you probably don't have a lot of time to do all this kind of
work for the Pentagon. You can't have a screen that can't be closed up and the screen not be visible at times, right? You want to be able to, for security purposes, not have, you can't just leave the tablet laying face up and you walk into the situation room. These things have to be closed and physically, sealed in some way, shape, or form, and they want to be able to lock those. So in those cases, it'll probably have some kind of locking mechanism so that the clamshell closes over the keyboard, so that someone can't actually look at the keys and see. Like, there are all kinds of security mechanisms put into place into a laptop form factor that a tablet would be susceptible to. I can see your fingerprint touches for your screen lock on the tablet screen, things of that nature that need to be thought through, and it just turns out the laptop factor is just a little bit more secure in that capacity. Maybe it's not more secure, but it has that appearance. And of course, it's what people are used to, right? Like if people are used to having laptops, they're giving them a form factor that they're used to carrying around and are capable of utilizing in that sense. Art is noting here, military grade hardened VPN and the power wash features make it a very useful tool. Absolutely, that power wash feature within Chrome OS is very powerful. It just takes 5 seconds to hit power wash, and then you to get to power wash and click it, and then it basically purges the entire operating system and puts on a fresh version of it. So that's what power wash feature is in Chrome OS. And anytime you have a problem with your Chromebook, just power wash it, log back in, and you're good to go. So it's not the same as Microsoft or Mac. Being able to just power wash a Chromebook is so powerful, and that could be very useful out in the field when things are critical, right? You need to get your system back up and running after whatever might have happened. A power wash can be the difference between life and death. So good on that. All right, next up, what are some of the other highlights from CES this year?
Oh, one of the other products we're going to talk is the Netgear Wi-Fi 6 Nighthawk, or Nighthawk is that they call. That's their power high-end next gear thing. And aside of the fact that as everybody is trying to go miniature in these devices, Netgear has decided to increase the size so everybody know who they are. Well, it's without a doubt, one of the best, or consider one of the best routers. I was looking for the price and I can't find it right now, but I had a little bit of a shocker price when I saw it the first time, when it came into my attention. But anyways,
but it's a Wi-Fi 6E router.
It is.
I mean, that's amazing. The Nighthawk RAXE 500. What is the name of the Star Wars flying vehicle that it looks like? It looks like it kind
Death
of looks
Star.
like that. No. We have a Star Wars expert on the screen.
No.
Millennial
It is
Falcon.
true. It is true that when it's open, it looks like Darth Vader machine. But no, it it will not make me buy it because of that. I'm so sorry.
Well, either way, I think that what we are seeing in the midst of the pandemic is an understanding from people that in order to be more productive, you have to have better connectivity. And so that's not just for you, but your children who might be homeschooling or remote schooling at the present moment. And there are just a necessity for everybody in the house to have multiple connected devices and to have consistent strength in that sense. And so Wi-Fi 6 is a great step in that direction. Even though the Wi-Fi 6 protocol, I think, is a benefit in a security perspective. The real benefits, I think, in Wi-Fi 6 is just the robust new capabilities of it to carry multiple signals and really traffic those in an intelligent way. And so it's good to see the first ones out on the market, and of course we'll hopefully see more and more of these come to market.
One comment in that, though, is that you need a device to be able to connect to it, and that's most devices probably won't. Like, I'm actually still on Wi-Fi 5. I've got like a Netgear router, and I've got a gigabit connection to the house, but I can only get 300 megabit to my computer via Wi-Fi. And we can both be streaming, but realistically, 300 megabits, plenty of speed for anything you need to do, right? Like 300 megabits is a huge a speed factor, and so we can both. We can.
No, just joking.
And I've got like a year-old Mac, and that's all I can get, right? Because I only have like, I don't know whether it's 2 or 4 or 6 antennas. I don't have enough antennas in my Mac to go with the current router, which is like the Wi-Fi 5. So buying a Wi-Fi 6 router, you have to be like completely up to date on your tech, I think, to support that. So it's probably good for them to release it now, but it'll be probably several years before you can effectively use that in the house.
I would agree with you. And there's a factor, which is I always say buy the newest router when you're ready to. I mean, if you don't have no reason to upgrade, don't upgrade for no reason. But when you are ready to upgrade and buy the latest version, because by the time you sunset that, say you buy a Wi-Fi 6 router this year, it'll be another 5 to 7 years before you replace that, and by then we'll be at 9, right? So I don't know what we'll be at, but we'll be several versions forward, and so you kind of want to hedge your bets that you get the latest technology to have the longest longevity in essence, in that sense.
Yeah.
So I fully hear you, Trevor.
And since you create a nightmare for the people of Netgear, we understand that the Imperial shuttle was what Darth Vader picked, and the Emperor sometimes travel on it, but no good adventure came out of there.
Thankfully, I have no idea what that means, and I'm a Trekkie, and I can't speak to that. But it does give 10 gigabytes per second over Wi-Fi in a fully accessible environment on that device. So I can see at some point really upgrading, to it with the future upgrades to devices and being able to support that. And of course, the other devices are backwards compatible, so they'll be on Wi-Fi 5 and otherwise, and that's fine. But to be able to have a device that can do 10 gigabyte downloads, wow, no, just amazing. To 10 gigabytes per second downloads just seems egregious. Well, as you said, Trevor, you really don't need that. It's a little crazy. Okay, let's move on.
Well,
Microsoft
then
is
your next Microsoft Surface may not be compatible with that yet, but hey, it's announced that the Surface Pro 7, it's out. And I don't know, I had one Surface at some point, and they're doing Microsoft is doing a good job on the hardware there. If I will need to get a PC, probably will be that again. And I love the form factor of the tablet, but I think they have been trying to really do a solid work with those machines. But there is one thing that they add to this one that is interesting, and they add an SSD storage that make it removable. That's awesome. The Pro that I had, or my mother-in-law, broke, and then you lost everything because the machine is so compact that you cannot open and work with anything of that. So the fact that you can now take your hard drive with you if the machine die, put it on the new one, or at least save the information, is a big thing. It's a big step in the right direction, at least in my opinion.
that a standard
next
SSD? Oops, quick question. Is that a
Sorry,
standard
go back.
SSD format? Does it come in
Oh
a,
no, I'm sure it's a custom made.
it's a custom made
The
business?
specs
Okay.
doesn't answer that question, but I'm willing to make a bet dollar to a donut that it is a specific one.
Yeah, because the picture looks, I mean, it looks very small and very unique looking. The picture
I
in
would
the
imagine
article.
that if it's a removal SSD, you're going to have a not proprietary SSD, but a proprietary slot in which it can go into. So you would have to buy a form factor that fit it. I would presume that there's not like a interchangeable case that you can't swap out the SSD without
Doesn't
more
like it.
work than not. But you know, if you're a DIYer, you might be able to do it. I don't know. So I'm not the electronics engineer in my family, so I'm not gonna try it. But yeah. So all right. Next up.
So next up comes from Samsung, and they are partnered with Samsung Whisk are partnered with TasteMate to help people with um, meal planning. It is, it has been something that has happened in every family around the world who discovered a year ago, oh, we need to meal plan, and especially at the beginning when the restaurants close, and how do you do this and how do you do it more effectively? And even that now there are a lot more places open that you can take out. This is still something that people discover. We laugh at the beginning of the pandemic when people were looking how you make bread and these things, but at the same time there is an art out of that a lot of people discover and enjoy and will like to keep it to a certain extent. So Samsung West are partner to help you doing a much better job getting into communities, helping you to continue in this creating a family hub, connect your refrigerator with your tablet, with the meal planning so you can do everything together. And hopefully that refrigerator will order an Instacart so you don't need to worry about that.
But this really shows the productivity component of being able to have a connected world. And Samsung made this statement implicitly in the Samsung Unpacked, the Galaxy Unpacked event last week. Was that last week? Yes, last week. And they made that statement that they showing the smart car and the connected car and the fact that they have all of these other home-based appliances that are connected within the Samsung world. Your phone and your other small electronics are capable of being a part of this larger ecosystem, and meal planning being something that can be automated in this sense can only be done when you have all of these different disparate tools connected to each other, and they're showing a first case, kind of expose of how this can be done, kind of an example of how this can be done. And this is really going to be interesting to see whether or not is Samsung going to find challengers in GE and others in partnership with the Big Four tech, and whether or not they can actually do that. I'm really curious to see whether or not they can get to these end results and which competitors will want to solve which problems. It seems like Google with Waymo has distanced itself. The Apple Car concept is probably a dud. What are the first IoT solutions that are really integrated across the entire kind of lifestyle workflow for people? Those are the things that really help us in our routines productively, and they need to figure those pieces out. And once they do, that first great example is going to be the winner in that market for probably the next decade or so. And so I'm really excited to see Samsung doing this. They have the infrastructure, right? They make everything from I always joke they make everything from phones to toilets. So they have the opportunity to really cover that gamut. And even the Samsung refrigerator, that it's got a camera inside, scanning everything inside of it, and it's got a wonderful display on the outside so you can see inside and do all kinds of interesting machine learning. There's some power there that I really feel can be useful to people in that way. So.
Oh no, I'm really excited to be able to say to text, hey, let's use this recipe, and the thing will tell me if we have it, not have it, order whatever need to be ordered, and stop on the way home and pick it up in the grocery. I think I'm living for that moment where I can throw that thing, and get it done. That will be fantastic. And I, for one, like you said, I'm really excited about this and see how this is improving and how, for us, given I may be the geek in the house, and I start moving at least the things that I cook into digital many years ago. And I love that I can go on Saturday and select the recipes, and the software that I use called Paprika Manager, and it adds, if I add a quarter of the milk in one and a quarter of the milk in the other one, give me a list that says half cup of milk. I don't need to even do the math or anything. And it is fantastic to look that you have what you need to plan for the week or for the dinner or for whatever. So I'm, for one, super excited.
Well, there was only two things I wanted to talk about in this segment on CES, the air things and now this product. What is our final product that we're going to be talking about from CES?
Well, our final product is $130 Liberty Air 2 Pro from Anker. And Anker, again, like Stetchy, has been known for their quality products, and this is their response to the AirPods. I'm really curious. I don't know if I will pay $130 over them instead of the iPods, but I'm really paying attention to this product. They are known for really high quality one, so it will be curious to see.
Well, nobody can say that I have a lack of headphones in my life. I have headphones that within just hand's reach, I have probably more headsets than most people have had in their lifetime. I have ones that kind of hang out for almost every purpose in my life. That's just what I can reach within like a few seconds time. So that's about 5. And I've probably got maybe 7, 8, 9. I've got about 10 within hand's reach. And I actually have the prior Soundcores, and these are not the Soundcore Pros, and I'm very happy with the Soundcore Pros, and so I'm really looking forward to the Soundcore 2, the Pro 2s, to see how they have kind of leveled up. This one has a physical charger plug. This one, obviously, I'm presuming is wireless charging, and the external mics on it, having, I forget how many mics are on the outside of that, but there are more than 10 microphones on the outside of that device, being able to, one, do active noise cancellation when you're in an environment that has noise while still giving you clear call quality. I'm going to be really looking forward to seeing how those match up against the Samsung Galaxy Buds Pro. Was that what they announced yesterday? Were they the Buds Pro or Buds 2? Either way, whatever they announced last week, in competition with my Google Pixel Buds 2 and the new Anker Soundcore Pro 2, because I think that we're going to have some really, really great, I'm sorry, I keep calling it Soundcore Liberty Air 2 Pro. Could they make the name longer? But the 2 Pros, I think, are going to be really, really a great product. Anker has been putting out some really good headsets. I'm looking forward to trying them out. So you can't beat that. $130 for high-end headsets, and they're going to go up against the AirPods Pro, and I think they're going to probably do just as well or better than them in out in the wild.
No, I agree. I agree. That's the reason I brought it. They are like Satechi. There are two brands that my experience has been super positive with.
Any final thoughts about CES, gentlemen, before we hit our first break? No? Good? Wonderful. And so with that, let's take a break and hear from our sponsor this week, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. We'll be back after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. We also host social and networking events and fireside expert chats, as well as member discounts for other programs, products, and services. Visit anythingbutidle.com/co-working to learn more. We have a special offer going on that ends on January 31st, 2021, that gives you a month of free trial and 50% off the membership rate. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. Get the special offer before January 31st. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. Before the break, we were covering CES 2021 in its virtual capacity, and now we're going to cover our stories of the week this week. And so, Augusto, what's our first story this week?
Well, first story is Samsung Galaxy Upcycle is going to start turning their old phones into IoT devices, and they are going to start keeping certain updates so people can use their old hardware for other purposes. Turning that old phone into a security camera, or turn it into a baby monitor, or some people has turned the old tablets, all the iPads into recipe managers and those kind of things. And I think this is awesome. Samsung has made a big deal about this idea, and they call it Galaxy Upcycle. But I think really every manufacturer should join their version of this and allow their users to keep using these devices instead of polluting with them.
Yeah, forget we're going to leave the adapter out of your brand new high-end phone box. And how about you actually put in some real, capabilities of these devices to allow them to extend their lives in these different paradigms. I think this is a fantastic program. It's akin to what Google is doing now by purchasing the Neverware Cloud Ready product line and allowing you to be able to reinvigorate what are old devices into Chromebooks, so that you can hand it off to the niece or nephew or to a young child, and they could just have a wonderful device to run with. I see a lot of opportunity here, and I think that a lot of these companies should also be supporting, whether that be Raspberry Pi Foundation or other organizations, to be able to bring more Linux devices online by virtue of writing them over. They can put their own bloatware on top of it, so that they're able to better have a little bit of control, because that's what this is all about. You put a Samsung Galaxy upcycled software onto their system, that allows them to continue to control you, and so to some extent that's what it's all about. But at the same time, it's helping to reduce environmental impact, and I'm all for that. So good stuff there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then our next news is Biogen announced on January 11 that they're launching a new Apple Watch study to see if they can detect declining cognitive health using the Apple Watch. And there is no doubt that the Apple Watch or the Android Watch are an incredible productivity tool. When I got my first one, I remember people asking me what it is, and I say that's the problem. The problem is my watch to this day don't do one thing that I can tell you, well, it's because this feature that I use this thing, but it do a bunch of little things that make me through the day so much productive, from waking me up in the morning without waking my wife so she don't get mad at me at 7 a.m. Hey, just that is worth the price of admission. Okay. Like many other things during the day. But now I have participated in a couple of these studies, and I think these are an incredible way for them to collect the data, to analyze the data, and to hopefully help a lot of people with their health, in this case, cognitive health.
Yeah, so I'll say on one side, I'm really excited about this study because I think this is going to be helpful for humankind. On the other side of it, everybody needs to be aware that, think about it, there is a a computer on your wrist that is collecting so much data about you that it's capable of recognizing cognitive decline, which is, usually requires some cognitive inventory administered by a medical professional. And so this is remarkable. Multiple CES products this year that came out are giving the capability of having a medical grade, what do you call it, EKG, or ECG device that you can use at home. Also remarkable advances in technology there, but also recognize that there is a trade-off. You need to remember that there's a data privacy and security trade-off with all of these tools. And but I think it's remarkable science, and I look forward to seeing whether the study actually births a finding that they can actually do it. If they can, that's just simply remarkable, and will help so many people. Because you think, if you have a family member and they're not tracking this data about themselves and they are going through that circumstance, you now can have maybe early warning signs, just like these ECGs and EKGs, where someone's taking their heart rate. They can tell whether you have tachycardia or is it bradycardia, whatever it is, before they ever actually exhibit real symptoms. They can do that kind of stuff and have early prevention, which is just phenomenal. All right, cool. Next up, what's up?
So our next news
and chat
comes
Microsoft Chat.
Yep, Google and the Microsoft Chat. It's a little video with the accessibility from Microsoft and Google talking about how this chat and how these companies can come and really let's move on into you do this and you do this, and let's come up into how we can do it better together. And it is, even if it's just for the marketing purpose, because of the time of the year, I is still naive enough that hope this lasts for more than a month of the year, and they really come to the table and continue working into that, so that way we can make it happen into a long term. We see a lot more collaboration and really a more platform agnostic productivity.
I think these design principles are really important, and it's really great to see them working together to make that happen. And so, yeah, I'm totally for it. I think that what we have to recognize is that we need to be productive in different phases of our life with different levels of ability. If I go to get, cataract surgery when I'm 65 or 70, hopefully that's as I can wait that long in life, and then I go for that, I will be visually disabled during that period of time. There are periods of your life when you have some different ability, and there are periods of life when you have perhaps permanent disability. But we shouldn't limit our technology, and certainly the design principles behind that technology, by virtue of thinking about it from just those folks who are permanently disabled. We should be thinking about it from an all abilities and potentially temporary disability perspective, and that way it's just always inclusive by design. And that's kind of what Microsoft has been doing for several years, and I'm really pleased to see their inclusive design principles. They have a whole site dedicated to it, and I haven't quite looked at what Google's been doing, but it's glad to see Google as a partner there. And yeah, I just think that we have to remember that, if I break my foot tomorrow, I still want to be productive. Convalescence is good, but I also want to be productive in that time frame. And if I happen to break my hand, I still want to be able to have voice input with the device, so that I'm capable of continuing to be productive even if I don't have use of a limb. There's so many ways in which we can be more productive by taking advantage of these. And I know that I always look, Augusto, a great example is you talking about replacing e-ink displays with your iPad by enabling some of the accessibility features on your iPad. These are components that we have built into these devices, and the assistive technologies can actually make us more productive in different ways. So we need to remember that these devices have these kinds of tools. I use Microsoft speech recognition all the damn time. I love it. I love being able to talk to Windows 10. I love being able to navigate the device in that sense. And when I'm by myself and I can talk to myself, it's great. I just talk to the computer and it does what I want it to do. And those things are really powerful. And it wouldn't come if we weren't thinking about this from a perspective of giving people of all abilities all the capacity to be able to compute. And so I'm very, very much a fan of that. All right, moving right along.
So the next news comes from Google, and Google or Alphabet employees are going to have their union, and the union is going to happen. And That's as far as I'm willing to cover the news, because I have it's an important news, but I don't know enough of the details and the information, not the care to find out, to be honest with you. But the next news is kind of sad. Not a surprise. Gazelle is shutting down their mail trading businesses, and I'm not surprised, because the price between used to be that you could sell your device, put a little bit of money, and buy the new one, and years ago, and that gap between buying new versus buying used is every year smaller and smaller and smaller. So I'm not surprised that they get a squish out of that business. Apple had discovered, as Google, as others, that it was a great business to be. Now they list you the device so they can get the device back and repurpose and do all this. So it was to be expected that that was going to happen.
Yeah, so Gazelle had the ability for you to mail products into them in the process of selling selling to another. Was it selling to another person, or were they purchasing from you? So
They purchase from you.
Yeah, and so they are leaving the kiosks that exist in physical imprints. Those will still exist after this mail-in component is shut down. And so I don't know who's going to malls to trade in their phones, but during a pandemic. But presumably they think that once people go back to in-person retail, by and large, then those in-person kiosks will continue to do their job. But you're absolutely right. I think that this is just the way of the market. We now are much more comfortable with buying new, and the market for being able to buy used is now trivial because of eBay and other platforms like that. You don't need a Gazelle in order to be able to make that happen, because we've pretty much figured that out in these other tools that exist. I'm curious if this is kind of akin to I don't know if Square Trade or other kind of phone insurance type products like that are still around and working and operable, but I'm curious how that whole market really plays into Gazelle's lack of kind of strength here now.
Yeah, I think that market was before, but what changed is how easy is to get the new phone from directly the manufacturer or directly from the phone company. It used to be you go to get the phone, and now you go and you can get a phone for $10 a month. I mean, why buy used? I not only that, you can now get with almost any phone or manufacturer. You get into their, okay, I'm going to pay you $30 or $15 or $20 for the rest of my life, and every 12 months I go turn my thing and you give me a new phone. So that has made a lot more people playing into that game, that then Gazelle gets choking. Plus, the cost or the price that these devices are selling is not as low as it used to be. And part of that, because what you are describing, you can sell it to Amazon, you can sell it to eBay, you can sell it to others that will give you on the exchange. Even Target now, here in the US, you can go when the new devices come in, and they buy your old device. So there is a market that has been cannibalized by everybody.
Yeah, I'll note that Square Trade, which I referenced earlier, is a kind of phone insurance program, and they were purchased, looks like, by Allstate, and so as little as $5 per month, or they have a family plan that's 4 phones for $20 per month and covers all kinds of catastrophe to your phones, and includes a screen repair facility as well. So that's pretty good. I thought they had gone the way of the dinosaurs and didn't exist any longer, but it looks like they're alive and well and still doing their thing. I mean, I thought that most people would just go to iFixit or another kind of retail outlet like that and get their phone screens fixed there. But if you have a phone plan that's paying for it, that's pretty a insurance plan of some kind that's paying for it. That's pretty good. All right. Moving on.
The next news, Apple, it's hinting that they will have new service development. They talk about Mail Plus, Podcast Plus, and other things. They just announced and released at the end of last year a bunch of service. And and I'm going to bring my sore eye to this. Okay, how about you fix, mail alias and other things on the current mail application before you sell me the plus concept. My sore thing has come out, but they have done these services. They have done the Apple Plus that they actually, there is a news also recent that they extend the free trial to middle of the year for the people. They extended, initially was until December, then they did February, and now they did June. But Apple has been seeing some success with the Fitness Plus and the News Plus, and now their new Apple One, where you can go into a lower price and get all the services at once. Let's see what happens with that. I have no doubt that more services will come. That's what Apple do, and that's what they do good.
So what are your gentlemen's perspective on premium services on top of the Apple ecosystem? Is that a good direction for people's productivity? Not?
I don't know how it is for the productivity perspective, but I would say that Apple appears to be doing a content plus premium strategy rather than a feature plus strategy. So like when I read that article, and it was like this group hypothesizing what services they might reach, Mail Plus didn't resonate for me because it's like, well, that's a feature thing. If you're going to add more features, you're going to have an outcry from users saying, why do I now need to pay for those new features? Whereas the Podcast Plus makes sense because now I can offer you premium channels that no one else has access to. And that model, I feel Apple feels more comfortable with. So the Content Plus, I think, is where Apple's going to head with a lot of their premium services.
Yeah, I know that I'm a little bit weird on the subject, only because it's like Apple has had this kind of stranglehold on the podcast world with the directory, and to be quite honest, they've done really well by podcasting, by hosting this directory. They haven't monetized it in any way, shape, or form, anything else like that. But I almost have a knee-jerk reaction to the idea that they're going to somehow then step in and monetize it in some way that's going to be detrimental to podcasts. But I don't think they will. I think they'll actually do a good job. But there is a kind of like a heart palpitation because so much of podcasting still depends upon the Apple Podcast directory.
If Apple is smart, what they'll do is they'll actually make it more of a, not quite a marketplace, but basically by monetizing it, they actually allow people to monetize their own podcasts in some way, in a similar, like almost like YouTube. So it's like, okay, if you go into and put yourself onto Podcast Plus, then we'll give you some of the revenue stream from the Podcast Plus. And I think that would be very compelling for some podcasters to try to monetize their podcasts in that
Certainly
way.
Those with very large audiences, certainly,
Yeah.
Some celebrities and those kinds of things, but even some smaller podcasters, I think, could really benefit from that. Yeah, that's a good point. And people are hungry for content. I mean, we see that now by and large, and Podcast Plus would be a type of content that would be easy to produce because it can work around COVID-19. It really is capable of being done in an environment that doesn't require, not that every podcast doesn't require in-person recording, but you can do a lot more virtually than you can in person.
Yeah,
And
I
to
like
tie
that.
into
Sorry, go, Trevor. Go.
I was going to say, to tie back into the productivity thing, is a lot of times the premium content is a higher quality content. So if you are trying to be productive and trying to limit what content you consume, it can be more efficient to just subscribe to the premium service, use the premium content, and not get all the free content, which tends to be like anyone can jump on. So it's a little bit, you have to sift through a lot more to find the gems, where in theory, the premium content will give you the gems. So it actually aids your productivity in that way.
Right. Unless it's Netflix, and then they have not solved that problem for me.
No, but I think you make a really good point about content, not feature. And I think they have done reasonable way in there. You see the fitness part. You cannot get the content, but you get all the other features with the Apple devices. So I think you made a really great point in there that if they continue that strategy, even to Mail Plus, whatever that means, to get more content, not more features for the extra, they may be pretty successful at it.
All right, moving right along in the news. Next story.
Well, apparently your Hey G, now you can going to go, Hey G, turn on guest mode. And my house do not have G's devices, but I understand that you can say the voice so that the G knows who is talking about, so it can do certain features and certain things, certain actions based on that. And now you will be able to turn on guest mode for certain people to come. So that was going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to, of course, shut off different capabilities because it is in guest mode, so it won't have access to things like calendar or sending messages or those kinds of things. But it will give them, call and response answers, so you can presumably you can control lights and those kinds of things inside the network. And you can also ask it questions like, how tall is Tom Cruise? I have no idea, but ask Big G. But the idea is that you then have capabilities for guests when they are there and not have to worry about them being locked out of using and utilizing lights and other things when they're in your home, especially when you have like a guest for a couple of days. Okay, next.
Yale professor find a formula to stick in 2 resolutions. And, we are in that time of the year. I don't know, actually, if we are this year count. On year past, this was the time of the year that my kids used to swim in the YMCA pre-COVID. So this was the time of the year that you need to calculate 10 minutes more so you can find where to park into the YMCA. That tend to end around January 25th. Okay, and by February, you can go again, regular time and park. I don't know what is the effect of resolutions in this year with people not moving. Are they people sticking to them? They will be able to stick longer with them or not? Or what this not living, not going out, it's going to make a change. Regardless of that, Yale professor Santos think he has a simple formula to stick into these resolutions, but I don't know.
Well, so the combination is in essence a self-kindness kind of activity combined with the SMART, goal formula, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely type goal. And using the 2 of those together, they were able to see an improvement in people's ability to achieve resolutions, because we know that, less than 20% of people who make resolutions keep those resolutions, and so they're seeing some efficacy there, which is interesting. Francis?
I wasn't sure I could operationalize what I read. Self-kindness. What is the self-kindness? What's the activity that generates that? And is it even different for each person? So, thought nice sentiment, but I couldn't figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, I think this was probably some specific set of behavioral interventions that they applied during this particular work, and so I'm not sure. It didn't identify that in the article, and I will likely dig into the paper when I have a chance. I just didn't have a chance before our recording today, but I am looking forward to digging under the hood and seeing what the actual study noted. But I'm presuming it was some specific set of behavioral interventions that were around self-kindness, and then applying the SMART goal formula to it.
Or they could have just been observations. They start I forget what you call it, not smart start, but the fresh start. That observation is true. There are more people who do marathons when they're 29, 39, 49, 59, the 9th year of the decade of their age than they do in the years before. And it's because they're crossing a Rubicon, they're crossing a big milestone, and they want to achieve this accomplishment before crossing the milestone. It's an observation, but there's not much you can do with it, in practical terms. So I'd be interested to see if she's not just observing something as opposed to actually being able to translate it into steps 1, 2, and 3.
I just want to jump in and say I think there are techniques that you could use for some of these things where part of it is I think people are too strict with themselves. So when they fall off of their resolution, it's like, oh, I didn't do my exercise today. It's all gone. Never mind, blah, blah, blah. And giving you that kind of recognizing that we're all human, we're all going to make mistakes, and to build that into your system. So I'll often use a stoplight system where like I have green is my goal resolution or my goal activity I'm trying to do. And then I have a yellow level. So if I'm trying to exercise 30 minutes a day, that's my green level. My yellow level is just 10 minutes. Or I now have this thing where, I track every single day that I'm doing. I'm really big fan of don't break the chain. That really works well for me. But some days I break the chain, and I have this app called Everyday that actually lets me mark a day as a half day. So it's like I didn't quite do it, but I didn't break it. And so now I have this rule is I have to keep a chain of at least 5 days. And if I do that and I happen to slip up, that's okay. And I don't actually break my chain as long as that only happens once. And then if it happens 2 days in a row, on the second day, I can recover the chain by like just doing it. So it's like this way of giving myself, that self-kindness, this recognition that I'm not going to be perfect, but there's still a system in there that allows me to achieve my goals, if that makes sense. Something about recognition that we're not perfect.
Yeah, and I think that many times. Go ahead, Francis.
Sorry. There's good science showing that if you set up implementation intentions around these failures to achieve your objectives, and you say, if I fail, then I'll see if I can hit the yellow level. And if I fail the yellow level, then I get a piece of chocolate so that I can forgive myself. And if you set these things up ahead of time, they actually work. If you rehearse what you're going to do if you do break the chain, and you decide ahead of time that here's my forgiveness activity. Here's my way of acknowledging the progress I've made. I write down all of the wins I've had, and this is a loss. Yeah. So there's good science that says that if you pre-rehearse failures like that, then they don't have the same effect as if the same psychological effect. Yeah.
I think it's useful so I pulled up the abstract to the paper, which is self-compassion increases self-improvement motivation. And I believe this is the paper. I may be getting this wrong now because I was plunking around trying to find the right paper, and it says, I'm not sure if this is the paper, but this is really interesting nonetheless. So the abstract of this particular paper that I have in front of me, that was linked to from the article, it says, can treating oneself with compassion after making a mistake increase self-improvement motivation? In 4 experiments, the authors examined the hypothesis that self-compassion motivates people to improve personal weaknesses, moral transgressions, and test performance. So it says participants in a self-compassion condition compared to a self-esteem control condition, and either no intervention or a positive distraction control condition expressed greater incremental beliefs about a personal weakness, the reported greater motivation to make amends and avoid repeating a recent moral transgression, and 2 other experiments. Either way, these findings suggest that, somewhat paradoxically, taking an accepting approach to personal failure may make people more motivated to improve themselves. So it's right on point there, Francis, that if we take self-kindness, that self-compassion approach actually can help. I wonder if this is self-selecting. The people in the study were people like us who tend to be tougher on ourselves, and therefore that negative self-talk actually competes with our overall productivity. That would be curious for me, like how they group together the experimental study participants. But it's one of those things where I absolutely believe that the more we speak to ourselves negatively, the less likely we are to be motivated to do things that competes with our self-efficacy, and ultimately we get less done. And so if we can increase this self-compassion and certainly positive self-talk, we're going to be better off. And starting it just a little bit with being lenient on yourself once in a while so that you can get back on track, as Trevor was noting with his practice, that's really great. I love it. All right. Next up, Augusto.
Our next story came from Chrome Box, and it is about how to get into really complicated extent to install the newest version of Firefox in your Chromebook. But if you want to have the options, we thought it was important for productivity. There is people who, I talk about browsers, and we have talked about browsers, and I have said for years you should have 2 different browsers. Doesn't matter if your device is a Chromebook. One for play, one for work. So if you use Firefox as any of those two, there is the link in there how you can upgrade and install the new version of Firefox into your Chromebook.
Fantastic. Next up.
Ring Doorbell now supports end-to-end encryption. So they released that, and the article come into, well, it's good, not good. What are the sacrifices that we're going to make? It is worth to try this out, yes or no?
Yeah, I think it's worth trying out. I mean, why wouldn't you try to have better and greater encryption across your connected devices? These are things that are on your home and work networks. So why wouldn't you want them to have greater security? There's going to be impacts for all of the greatness of any particular security implementation. You're going to have some offset of convenience and certainly more data being transited, which of course can bog down a network. So I'm curious to see how this all works, but I'm happy to see it come to pass.
Well, our next news it's an article from Make Use Of, 10 reasons why you should be using Signal. In the last weeks has been all this comments about WhatsApp and the news and the change of term and condition, if it's going to share more information or less information with Facebook. And there is a significant amount of people who is moving out of WhatsApp, getting into Signal, getting into Telegram. Elon Musk talked about Signal, and there was even some people who decide to be clever, go to the stock market and buy a company that they thought there was Signal. So the price went from God knows how many cents to $60. And then, of course, crash and burn, because it was not the company. The actual company on the penny stock needed to come and put an official announcement, we are not the Signal you're looking for, go and find another one. But anyways, this article comes into 10 things why Signal, why it's free of charge, the transparency, being open source, the total encryption that he has, how your number is secure with Signal that may not be in other places, the biometric security options, the local storage that it produces, and you can protect the IP address that the device use, screen protection, screen privacy, read and receive options, and finally the popularity. Really was a 7, in my opinion, a 7 reasons article, but it's a pretty good article. If you want to understand a little bit more, you are confused about why this term of conditions affect you, or just simply jump the boat. If you already jumped the boat, went to Signal, you want to understand more about it, it is a good article to read.
Yeah, so people have to understand that WhatsApp is changing their privacy policy in order to let people know that they would be collecting some data and sharing that with Facebook. Now, Facebook owns WhatsApp and Instagram. Facebook has been going through the process of merging Instagram direct messages and Facebook Messenger in this same way. And in order to do that, they're not sharing the messages themselves within WhatsApp, but some of the metadata like location and who you're messaging with and certain types of information around that, which of course caused a little bit of a stir, and people decided to jump ship from WhatsApp and run to Signal. That of course crashed the Signal servers these past couple of days, which has been a little bit struggle for those of us who have been just happily using Telegram and Signal without the rest of you, and now of course have had a little bit of impact. But Signal will ramp up their servers and be able to withstand the new users, and I think that's all good. I think that we need options out there in the market that aren't Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Apple. And so I'm glad to see other options in the market gaining steam. Telegram, just noted 400 million users. I think they probably just raised another 100 million in the last few days. That's egregious, but they probably have increased that number substantially in the last week from all the things that have been happening, and I think that's a good thing. So we should have options.
The one thing I was going to add to that is apparently WhatsApp uses the Signal protocol behind the scenes for encryption. Right. So my question is, can you actually, what's the transition strategy. If you want to move over to Signal from WhatsApp, can they interoperate in any way, or is there a way that you can bounce to the server?
Nope. There's no connection whatsoever. So the signal protocol, which is why the messages are not accessible. It is just the data around it. And so using the signal protocol in Facebook's perspective means that they're just using that for the messages. So you cannot get access to the messages. Facebook cannot get access to those messages. I'm sure that there is some, I'm not sure about the specific details about it, but it would be the messages themselves that would be, not able to be turned out of the blob, basically extracted from the blob that's transited, but all of the metadata around it is not. I mean, that's WhatsApp and proprietary, and so therefore they do know some of that data. And
potentially your photos too, because your photos get saved to your photo roll and are not encrypted, and so then WhatsApp has access to any photo you get sent or any photo you send.
Correct. Especially with the new storage capabilities within WhatsApp to be able to save storage, they've given you greater capacity, which of course probably reduces security in some way, shape, or form. Not in any grand perspective inside the app, but as soon as you take those photos and save them to local storage outside of the app, you're increasing that surface. So yeah, I think that it's interesting. I don't think it really has a great impact on the average consumer in terms of their understanding or care, but I think certainly for those of us who are paying attention, a more secure messaging tool is great. This is a great opportunity to educate your family and friends, circulate the articles and scare them a little bit so that they come over to Telegram and Signal with you at this time. And it has many of the same features. You can make phone calls and you can do little video chats on Telegram and so on and so forth. And you're creating a better, more secure experience with those family and friends, and that will ultimately help them. One less person hacked. All right, final two stories before we get to new tools.
Well, then the next story is a story from Lifehacker. It is okay to delete people on social media. And I'm going to open the questions before I give my opinion about this to Francis and Trevor and you. Before I open my big mouth about this, I'm going to let you guys walk the plank before I jump on it.
I'll cover it for everybody, and I'll say that I feel like it's completely okay to delete people on social media. I have no problem with doing so. It's just like in a personal relationship. If I don't want to communicate with you anymore, I will just tell you I do not want to communicate with you anymore, and an unfollow or a block tells you in very clear terms that I no longer want to communicate with you. And it happens to be, I guess, a little bit more public in that perspective, but I think that healthy relationships begin and end, and so why wouldn't those be possible in social media? As I train small businesses on this subject, I always say that social media is like any other social technology, and therefore human principles apply, human social principles apply. So if I have a problem with what you're doing with me, then I should communicate that as a human to another human. And if you don't abide by the social compact or the social pact that we've created, then there needs to be repercussions. I need to be able to know that I can disconnect, especially if it's unhealthy for me. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think it's actually healthy. It's part of, in the same way, and I agree with you, in the same way that you do it in real life. You need to do it in social media, and you need to get over that. Well, what if and the reasons the reasons people give to themselves why they should not do it. It's healthy, it's good, and there is people who need to be blocked, snooze, and out of your social media life.
All right, who's going to take devil's advocate?
I'm not going to take devil's advocate, but I'll go one step further and go into it can be healthy just to remove people who you don't have conflict with, but you just are no longer connected with. I think that social media creates this awareness drag on us, where we're suddenly aware of social connections that we normally would have just let go of. And so that just creates a drag on our mind. We open up social media. Oh, yeah, that person. I haven't thought about that person for a long time. I'm not really connecting to them anymore. I don't care about their news. Why are they still in my feed? And they still are, because it can be socially unacceptable to say no or something like that. But yeah, this whole cleansing of letting go and letting relationships fade and disappear is useful, and to get rid of that awareness drag, because I think that awareness drag drags us down, because now it just saps a little bit of awareness each time that we can't put where we really want to put our awareness and our focus.
I'll make an even more aggressive statement, which is that you don't need to accept every connection request that you receive on social media either. That even people you know and even like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to accept their connection requests on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on other platforms that have that kind of mutual acceptance modality. I just don't. I don't need to be connected to people that I knew 30 years ago, and we have not kept in touch, and we aren't going to keep in touch. So why do I care about seeing their, random pictures of their life, scroll through my feed? It's not providing me with any greater value in life. And there are certain circumstances. Actually, I reconnected recently on Facebook, of all things, because it's not my preferred platform. I reconnected with a friend I had in I guess elementary school, maybe middle school, junior high school in New York City type of some people call it middle school, some people call it junior high school. Either way, and it's really lovely to reconnect with someone that I had lost touch with, and I probably will reestablish that relationship in a close sense. But if I didn't have that belief, there's no way that I'm accepting a friend request from somebody that is going to just basically create more drag on my system. Every individual that I have connected to me is another individual that I have to maintain and manage around, and I want to, because I want to have those close bonds and those close relationships, and that means that I can't have all the relationships. I can only have so many in order to make that a vibrant life that isn't overburdened. And I have a lot of siblings, and that means I will probably at some point have a lot of nieces and nephews. So I gotta manage. I gotta keep it. I gotta keep the reins on things with all the kids in my family. Okay. Last but not least, Augusto, what's our final story this week?
It's an article from the New Republic called Against Productivity in a Pandemic. Why we have been told by bosses, business app, ourselves to optimize the new time to get things done. And it was a really interesting article, or at least I enjoy it a lot. On I think all of us got a great opportunity with the pandemic. And I've been arguing since September last year that we need to look into the pandemic has brought terrible things. Yes. But there is also brought great things. And one of the things that was interesting was looking at people saying, oh, now I have this time and I need to do more and get more. And I, as a productivity person, as a coach, I wonder, wait, do you want to do more of what is important to you, or you want to do more so you can get the time? And one of the things a lot of people discover was their agendas and their calendars and their to-do list were full of stuff that they didn't care for, that were not making their life better. And because you are at home, or because you are now working at home and you have more time, that doesn't mean that you need to get that time filled up with anything. It may give you the chance, maybe for the first time ever, to reclaim some time, some healthy time, some free time, some quiet time. So it has been really interesting to, look at this. So look at what it is. And the article make a couple of good points. Hey, understand what are the rules that you're going to put for this? What are the things that you are okay with, and what are the things you don't? Hey, not every call need to be a video conference. Some of them, it's okay to turn off the camera. It's not all of them. You don't need to be available to Slack 24/7. Come and set those rules, and don't think that because we are in the pandemic now we all need to learn how to make bread and cook. Okay, even if your Samsung will tell you what is on the fridge, as we were discussing early, make sure that you can tell the Samsung back, nope, tonight we have pizza.
I'm going to speak out of two sides of my brain, which is on one side, I see because I pay attention to the economy just generally for work purposes, I see payrolls bloodletting. I see increasing unemployment throughout this pandemic, and we're going to see more and more of that happen. And when we have 750,000 and 800,000 and a million people who are unemployed week over week filing for unemployment, I can see how employers kind of get greedy, and they see this as an opportunity to be able to eke out more. This happened in the last economic recession. It happened, in the prior economic recession, where we see employees worried about losing their jobs and therefore want to ramp up productivity and therefore look for ways in which they can show themselves to be more valuable to their employers. So on one side of this, I very much feel for the people who want to be more productive because they feel fear from the ecosystem, from the work culture and the economic impacts of that. On the other side of that, I fully resonate with this quotation from the article. This mindset is the natural endpoint of America's hustle culture, the idea that every nanosecond of our lives must be commodified and pointed toward profit and self-improvement. And in a literal pandemic, as millions of us are trying to practice home isolation while also attending to the needs of our families and communities, the obscenity of pretending that work and the self are the only things that matter or even exist becomes harder to ignore. And just a great distillation of that kind of absurdity that we're all dealing with. But at the same time, I also find the article's perspective that productivity, again, is one of these undefined blobs. We talk about productivity, and I try to always use the term personal productivity or individual productivity because what you define as productive is not the same as what I define as productive. I think that sitting with my thoughts is productive. And I think that there is something about intentionality that has to do with productivity that is what other people would consider time wasting. And so with this malleable, amorphous definition that we frequently have around productivity, I find kind of unfortunate because this person clearly is feeling something about being put upon by being more productive, and I don't feel that. And that means all of our experiences are so very different in the context of this pandemic, and we have to take that into account as we all move forward. And there is just as much self-compassion as compassion and kindness being extended outward toward others throughout this. Because, if I was an essential worker that had to be out there working every day, that's stressful, on top of the fact that I need to be more productive so that my employer sees that, sees my productivity, and therefore doesn't want to let me go when things get rough when it comes to cash flow. So I see it in both ways. I really do. I have great concern for everybody in this circumstance.
I thought the article responded to this notion of productivity as, in terms of it being about hyperwork, but the response seemed to me to be saying, here's what you should do instead. I don't think there's just like you're saying, Ray, I don't think there's a should. It's not a shouldn't or a should. I think the way to think about productivity in these times is you are aware of where you are at any point in time, and you're able to generate choices, and you always make the best choice. Whether that choice is to work, rest, exercise, or just veg out,
Play.
Whatever it might be, play,
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. I think that's for me is the new. If there's a new definition of productivity, that's it. It's more about being present, having choices, and making the choices than it is going from one should to another should. Personal
You love
rant.
that? See how I brought us all circled back around to how words matter in productivity in this episode? I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Trevor,
On purpose.
You got a thought?
I was just going to say I think one of the dangers is that fear and stress kill your productivity. And so you can get into this downward cycle where you feel like you need to be more productive. We're actually all probably less productive just because of the stress of COVID, of being locked in our houses, all that. Some of us are affected more with that than others, but we're all affected somewhat by all this stress. And that is reducing our productivity. And then when you try to amp up your productivity, especially if it's a fear-based where I might lose my job, I might do things like that, you can actually get into this place where you're just like trudging and you're going into this downward spiral, because the more productive you try to be, you're not really relaxing. So I think that, like Francis said, the making the decision to step away, to whether you call it productivity or not, I would say to just not be productive, to relax, to reset, to refresh yourself. That actually is better for your productivity than to trying to be productive all the time, especially in these times of high stress and high fear.
Yeah, again, I'll go back to this, like, to produce, being productive is to produce. Producing is what you decide to produce. And so being not productive is what you're saying. And that's just, again, it's just semantics. But I see that as producing. When I sit down and I meditate, and I've had a very long-term, multi-decade meditation practice. When I sit down to meditate, that is productive for me. I am producing a state of being that allows me to reduce anxiety, to create greater clarity, to focus my thoughts, all of those kinds of things. Production doesn't have to mean outward output. You don't need to see it in order to understand that I'm being productive. Spending time with a spouse or partner, that can be productive because it keeps a happy home. If you and that doesn't require you to build something or do something. It's just being with a person. It's like holding the hand of your loved one as they pass away. There is nothing that has to be done. It's just being. How can you not consider that to be productive? And so this is in agreement with you, Trevor, I think, all told, which is to say that we all need to take into account what values we have. And I don't mean values in terms of morals, but values that we place on the things in our world, and whether those values are worth us putting time, tension, energy, and otherwise finances into, and making those kinds of choices, as Francis talked about. And I think ultimately that is what allows for kind of that Socratic good life. And so that's what interests me and intrigues me always about personal productivity, and certainly the technologies that we talk about. And so thank you all, gentlemen, for the stories of the week. We are going to go into our next segment, the new tools of the week. And so in essence, Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools and services each week, and we'd like to share a couple of them that we come across and we think you might like to use, or to at least learn more about. We invite our panelists to also share a tool that they maybe use or know about that you might also find interesting. And so with that, this is New Tools of the Week. And so I will start us off with my new tool of the week. Again, playing on the Thesaurus Day theme, I thought I would show you all a tool that I actually really use and enjoy using, and it is called Hemingway. And so Hemingway is this really simple application that does something really profoundly important and powerful. So what you can do is you could take any amount of text and just paste it into the Hemingway application. And once you do paste it in here, I think there we go. So let's say we paste this in here, it actually automatically highlights text in different colors and tells you whether or not you've written it well. It actually grades it, it tells you how many words, and it gives you more statistics about that particular item. And you can go ahead and edit the document that you're writing right here. I use this all the time for email because I tend to write really long emails and the sentences are too long. And while I've used multiple add-ins for Gmail and other tools, this is just a really great place for me to be able to throw them, especially when I'm going across multiple email clients, or if you're just writing a document and you want it to just be a little bit clearer, a little bit pithier, just throwing this into Hemingway. It's free, and there's a desktop application as well. And so that's Hemingway app, and it's very, very helpful. Okay, who's next? Augusto, what's your tool this week?
My tool this week is an application for the iPhone and the iPads called Scanner Pro. And there has been a lot of evolution with the cameras and the phones, but Scanner Pro has been an app that has been on my phone for an incredible time. You can save them there. They save directly to Dropbox. They save to iCloud. You can scan multiple documents on black and white and color. They will put it together as a file, as a PDF. You can send it. You can make annotations. It's been incredible. Not only that, it has the ability that when you take the picture, it shows you the border of the paper. So people, if you do it properly, don't know that you're doing that with the camera, and you don't need to get when we had this, when we were buying the last house, we were scanning some documents, and I my wife sent the picture of the document that they were asking. It was a 2-page document, and the person responds saying, "Sorry, it cannot be taken with a phone. You need to find a scanner." And so she called me and said, "Well, what I can do?" And I said, "Oh, let me pull my phone." And I took it with Scanner Pro, send it to the, "Oh, thank you very much for using your scanner. That was fantastic." So it is an incredible application and really powerful.
Fantastic. I am going to check out Scanner Pro for my iPad. All right, next up, I think it's you, Francis. Francis, what's your tool this week?
And you are mute, the first one of the day.
You are muted,
Caught,
sir.
busted. Save my time. And it's an app that is connected to your smartphone. It allows you to track your time in retrospect. So it's how did you spend the last however number of minutes since the app last locked its screen. So you can't, it pops up a pop. You can't use your app unless you deliberately tell the program how you spent the last however number of minutes since the last time the screen was locked, which makes it just a perfect fit for natural behavior. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to set up a reminder. I've tried all of those, and they really haven't worked all that well. But this one has allowed me to, I don't know, double, triple the quality of my time tracking. All of a sudden, became precise, whereas before it was all about guessing and trying to recreate days based on my calendar of activities, which has never really worked very well. So this is a big winner. So it's whoever thought of this, actually said, how can we fit into people's natural sets of behaviors? How can we fit into their existing habit pattern? And that, I think, is a winner in every case.
And so this is an Android app available in the Google Play Store only. So there's not an iOS
no
equivalent
iOS
of that. Yeah, and
Okay.
it's free. There's a free version, and then there is a professional version that I think when we last looked at it, it was just a couple bucks per month. Let's see here. What's the
$3 a month.
let's see. Here we are. So the free version is up to 9 activities and limited history, and then with professional, it's $3 USD per month if you bill it annually, or $5 per month otherwise. But then you get unlimited activities, unlimited history, data export, calendar integration, and a custom date picker. I think that's good that they left it last because it is the least valuable of the other features that are in the Pro version. Wonderful. Thank you, Francis. And last but not least, Trevor, what's your pick this week?
So my pick is Tusk List. And this is basically a new app. It's still kind of under development by this guy, Art. And it's designed to help you go through your getting things done weekly reviews more efficiently. And so what it does is it guides you through each step. So you kind of have a guided step, which tells you each step to follow, and then it has a timer that lets you time that, so you can kind of see which steps are taking you a long time, which steps are quick, and then you can also start calibrating how long it takes for you to do your weekly reviews. And then he has different processes, so you can actually set up different types of reviews and break it down in different ways. So it's very young app, but I thought it was interesting to go through. I really like the workflow process that he uses.
Fantastic. And so the pricing looks like it's $10 USD per month, and you can
The pricing is really interesting. I have never seen this approach, and I could, it's really interesting. It's $10 a month, but if you do your review, you will pay less. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's incentivizing you to go ahead and keep up the good work, but also to keep using their app.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Great new tools of the week this week. And so with that brings us to nearly the end of the show, gentlemen. This has been a really great time, and I appreciate everybody being here. And so with that, we're going to say goodbye to you all. Francis, how can folks keep up to date in terms of what you're doing out there in the world? What's the best way for people to keep up in touch with you? I think we've lost Francis for a moment there. Okay, we're gonna turn to Trevor. Trevor, we're gonna close you out first. Trevor, how can people keep up to date in terms of the great work you're doing out there in the world of productivity?
Yeah, certainly. So people can, if they want to listen to me on Twitter, I'm at FastFedora, FastFedora hat. And of course, my app is called Day Optimizer. So they can go to dayoptimizer.com or the Day Optimizer app. And in general, across all the socials, I'm either FastFedora, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all that FastFedora. And then Day Optimizer is all the other socials.
Wonderful. And for those of you who don't know, that we run Personal Productivity Club, and inside Personal Productivity Club, we're excited to announce, we'll probably make it public tomorrow morning, and I'll post to let everybody know, but we've created a Day Optimizer channel, a group inside of Personal Productivity Club dedicated to Day Optimizer and Trevor's work. So go out there if you're listening to the podcast. Those of you who are watching live, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow. But those of you who are listening to the podcast, we'll have already made this live, and so you'll be able to find the public channel, the channel inside of Personal Productivity Club dedicated to Day Optimizer. And thanks, Trevor, for launching and running that group inside of Personal Productivity Club. Hope it's useful to everybody.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions about time management, jump in that channel, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Fantastic. Great to have you, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you.
Francis, how can people keep up to date with
Yes,
you
sir.
and the work you're doing out there in the world?
Sure. Well, the big event that we have coming up is the Task Management and Time Blocking Summit coming up on March 4th to 6th, 2021. And that's info. And
So I'm going to
we're
put it up on screen.
hoping to have somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 speakers.
We're losing you a little bit. So your timeblocking-summit.info for folks to be able to learn more about the time management, task management, and time blocking summit that's happening. What's the date again?
March 4th to 6th, 2021.
Fantastic. Always wonderful to have you, Francis. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Whoops. All right. And then there were two. Augusto, thank you very much for joining me as always and helping make Anything But Idle happen.
It's my pleasure. It's always my pleasure.
Wonderful. All right, gentlemen. And hello, those of you who have stuck with us to the end. We have reached the close of this episode and our productivity and technology news this week. If there's any stories we missed, you can head over to our contact page and go to anythingbutidle.com, click contact. You can tweet or DM us at anythingbutidle, and you can also leave a question or comment directly on the show page. So if you go to anythingbutidle.com/040, you'll be taken to the episode page. You can comment there as well. On that episode page, you'll find our show notes with links to all the stories we covered. We sometimes have some extra stories that we couldn't cover in the episode. We place those there as well. We put our new tools of the week. We have a text transcript, both a text one that's right there on the page. Just click that read more link, or you can download the PDF and therefore read it, kind of track along with the audio. It's machine generated, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough to be able to run through if you need to. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to subscribe so you can learn about upcoming weekly shows that we have here, and feel free to hit the thumbs up icon. That helps us grow our listening and watching community, so thank you for doing that. And feel free to subscribe in your favorite podcast app. You can find all of those at anythingbutidle.com/subscribe, or just click on subscribe when you're on the anythingbutidle.com website, and you'll see instructions to go ahead and follow us and get episodes downloaded for free each week or every show that we put out. With that, see you all next time here on Anything But Idle, and here's to your productive life.